I am very excited. Yes. Okay. We're recording. And okay, I'm gonna tone down the excitement for a second. Just because if I don't, I'm gonna talk too fast. And I know the screen reader users, that's fine. But for other folks watching this, it does help for me to be a little slower. Okay. So I am going to share my screen and talk a little bit about this call. So welcome all to the first Notebooks for All monthly community call. The goal of this project is has a history, which we'll get into in a little bit. But my goal in today and in the coming months is to increase the discussion around assistive technology and open source, and how assistive technology users can advocate for their access needs. And we're doing this under the umbrella of the Notebooks for All project. And Notebooks for All we'll talk about the history, but the goal with these notebooks is that they're such a broad tool for literacy and education and employment these days, that all their inaccessibilities create a lot of inequity, and a lot of inaccessibilities fall under the umbrella of notebooks. So we have a very big problem, and we are going to talk about what's being done to solve it without so much focus on what the problems are, because we need to act sooner than later. So today is March 12th. It is right now 10:15 a.m. Pacific time. And this event and Zoom link is hosted by the IOTA School. Thank you so much to Patrick and his team there. Patrick is a blind developer and community advocate who just does incredible work in building community with the blind and low vision communities, and increasing access to data science literacies for those specific populations. So this event actually follows on the tail of that. We'll mention that quite a few times today. So these first few minutes here, we're going to discuss the goals. We've discussed the goals of the event, and the next couple minutes, if anybody wants to do any introductions and share anything, what's been interesting to them, what's been good to them, if there's anything they're struggling with, and then following that, I'm going to do a presentation talking about the Notebooks for All history and what got us here. And then soon following, I'll talk about work that I've been doing for the past years or so, and then we'll do some wrap up, and we'll figure out what the community is going to start to look like for the next couple months. So with that, that's the intro. Does anybody have any questions or comments there? If not, that's fine. I just like to leave a little bit of space before we move on. Excellent. So that's our agenda for today. And we're going to start with introductions now. And I realized they can't duck out of introductions in a small room like this, can I? But my name is Tony Fast. I've been a research scientist for, I guess, 20 years now. I'm got a PhD in material science, and I've been working in open source for quite a while. I'm a distinguished Jupyter contributor, and I helped lead some of the Jupyter accessibility efforts that are ongoing. And now I am working on this project and trying to lead community for Notebooks for All, because the Notebooks for All project has started as a disability-led effort, and there is disabled community building going on right now, and I hope to continue that momentum. So that's why I'm here. I almost said period, like I was dictating that in a text, but I didn't say period. But now I just said it twice. But anyway, does anybody want to introduce themselves?
I guess I can.
Thank you.
My name's Eric. My background's in somewhat like finance and also physics. Kind of getting into data science currently. Learning a lot of Python and trying to find, I guess, accessible coding environments. Currently use a lot of VS Code, but also looking for alternatives that are more essentially like Jupyter notebooks. So that's why I'm interested in this.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. Microsoft has been doing remarkable things with VS Code's accessibility. And it's
Mhm.
interesting too how some of those features are even like showing up in the default experience and people aren't noticing. Like there's little
Mhm.
sound bits and stuff, you know. So there's
Yeah.
kind of like an accessibility for all kind of theme there. But yeah, it's still a lot, right? There's a cognitive challenge with some of these things when you just want to learn some data science.
Yeah,
Um,
VS Code is a huge learning curve. I started with just Notepad++, just basic text editing software. But yeah, no, VS Code has been a pretty big learning curve, so I'm still working on that.
right, right, right. Yeah, so where I'm going to be coming from today is I haven't built that experience just yet. I'm so close. But there's the goal is, you know, we've almost like separated the reading experience from the writing experience. But my goal is to make these like documents that are readable, and then eventually you can progressively enhance them. And if you start from like a accessible foundation, then the progressive enhancement can start to become more accessible. So I'm not gonna necessarily provide a solution for that today, but we can certainly glimpse into it. And you know, hearing y'all's experiences and stuff like that really help in advocating for people to support projects and programs that do this work.
Hey, I can
Hi.
myself as well.
Thank you.
I am a writer, journalist. Last couple of years, I've been writing a lot about disability and communication, kind of like cultural, not technical side, but I like to write about disability and tech, disability and culture. I wrote a book called The Country of the Blind that was very much had a chapter about tech, and I got in touch with Patrick Smith recently, and I've been taking his non-visual data science workshop, and he and I have been corresponding a little bit, and he's been encouraging me to join the plain. We were talking about plain text in sort of a different context, and then he kind of pulled me deeper into a rabbit hole that I was already traveling down. You know, as a screen reader, as like a sort of, I'm like a relatively new screen reader user the last like 4 years or so, 3 or 4 years. And
Mhm.
I writing in Markdown rather than trying to live in Microsoft Word, for instance. There's a lot of affordances that I'm enjoying, and but I guess my interest in something like Jupyter notebooks and stuff is probably more from like a writerly standpoint, which is to say like writing about this initiative rather than like me doing hardcore data science. Although data journalism of mine and something that I could imagine teaching in the future as well as using in my own work. So I'm kind of participant observer in that way.
Oh, oh, I'm so happy that you're here. I have a deep fascination in this. So I can definitely talk to that. Journalism's been really interesting to me. in all of this. In fact, there's quite a few references to Jupyter notebooks and data-driven journalism. And I really think that there's something to this style of programming, especially in disinformation age, when you start to have code and objects and things woven into the narrative a little bit. We can do some very progressive forms of journalism. Yeah, a lot of that, it's interesting to think about that in the context of accessible documents. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Hey, can I just like talk about special interest real fast, like based on the journalism thing?
Yeah.
Cool. So like I'm gonna do this is like a semiotic deconstruction of everything, right? But like I really like drawing in notebooks. It's a very important practice for me. It's a daily practice. It's my journaling practice. And it's you start to think about this like practice that you do every day. We've worked with journalists in Atlanta before, verifying some census things and stuff like that. And we worked in notebooks, right? Because they're not a tool for data science as people think. They're a tool for literacy, right? So they're this tool for like reading and writing. And like what I've been trying to do for so long is recreate the cognition, the feeling that I have when I work in like hand-drawn notebooks. I want to get that on a computer, and it's really hard to get through a limited like visual lens. But when you start to add sight or sound and touch in the screen readers and stuff like that, yeah, it's really interesting how you start to get this multi-sensory experience. And I'm going to experiment with that today when I give these talks, actually. Yeah, I'm very inspired by the need to write about things, and the things I need to write about are code. So for me, I find it a very odd form of journalism. And I've actually been publishing all of my content using notebooks, using these accessible templates and testing them out. And I think there might be something very practical to some distribution of journalism through this mode that I'm going to talk about.
Awesome. I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, nice. Okay, great. So I'm going to do the first notebook then. Yeah, this is exciting because I just love talking about my colleagues. The people who built this Notebooks for All project are just such a remarkable group of people. And I'm gonna I got a quick question for you guys.
Screen read Astronomy Notebooks for All page tab.
Can you hear my screen reader?
Yeah.
Banner. Read a notebook summary. Notebook
Great.
summary toggle button tab.
That's how we're doing it.
Collapsed.
Okay.
Tab. Astronomy Notebooks for All. Visited link heading level 1. A media and software manufacturer for disabled developer experiences.
So our goal with this project was to do a lot of advocacy around accessibility and disabled experiences.
Notification. Zoom : screen reader off.
And I got a picture here of all of our friends. There's 5 of us here. There's Jen Kotler from the Space Telescope Science Institute, and her colleague Eric Talirad. And then there's Patrick from the IOTA School, and then myself and Isabella Presetta Floyd. And we're kind of the group that got this whole project started. It's a really unique collaboration of disabled programmers, disabled open source developers, designers, and community leaders in a lot of different places. We're all in this picture, we're all unbelievably happy. The connections that we've been able to make, starting with a very disability focused effort, was unique, and it challenged us. But at times, the rewards were just absolutely massive. So I'm going to continue along.
Screen reader on. Astronomy notebooks for link. Link.
Okay.
A Space Telescope Science Institute.
I'm
link.
goofing this up.
Produce
Yeah,
an
we're gonna get
extensive
it. Okay.
Leaving. Jupyter notebooks play a central role in modern data science workflows. Despite their importance, these notebooks are inaccessible to people with disabilities, especially those who rely on assistive technology. Impacted users must find extreme workarounds or give up using them entirely. Link. Students with disabilities have reported leaving their field. Link. Once they learn their chosen career's foundational tools are inaccessible to them. Space Telescope Science Space.
So that's the motivation for this work. We are doing this for the folks who are being excluded, especially for a piece of technology that's being used more and more and more. And the Space Telescope Science Institute.
Space Telescope Science Institute produces extensive community resources and infrastructure in Jupyter. The Institute has committed to fostering an inclusive environment and has funded this project in 2022-2023 as part of the Director's Discretionary Fund. Other collaborators include community contributions and work from STEM- and accessibility-focused organizations such as Ioga School, Link, and Quansight Labs, Link. Escape. Astronomy notebooks for all document web.
So this project is a collaboration between many folks. It was funded. It is not now. This is a volunteer, community-driven effort, and hopefully by continuing to build community and safe spaces for affected users, we will eventually get some funding to do this stuff. I'm optimistic here.
Cell one, link bullet running usability feedback sessions with impacted users who rely on escape.
So I wanted to go back here.
Level colon. Start small to discover the needs of affected users. Link heading level 2.
So this problem of interactive notebooks is super hard. Accessible VS Code really hard because we're retrofitting experiences without knowing how our choices ultimately have an effect on users, and the distribution of them. So
goal colon. Start small to discover affected users. Block quote. This is a challenging problem to solve. The notebooks for all project is taking the first steps, initially focusing on static notebooks colon. Link.
Okay.
Cell 2.
So one of the reasons, sorry, I'm going to stop for a second. One of the reasons I'm trying to do this with the screen reader is because I think it's important for people to experience a screen reader who haven't experienced a screen reader. So I'm trying to figure this out now. I was playing around with it a little bit, but I'm trying to use this as a way to introduce this concept a little bit more, and change sort of the way that we participate with things. So sorry for kind of some of the navigation problems here. I think at some point my hands are going to stop shaking and I'm really going to get into this, or maybe this isn't the notebook. But basically, the problem is so big with this interactive computing that we wanted to start smaller, and we wanted to really see how people were being affected. So there were usability studies that were run. We wanted to figure out what made them inaccessible. We wanted to do some fixes on notebooks based on this feedback. And then we also wanted to organize some community. So this is I think one of the most important things to highlight.
Astronomy notebooks for all. Visage. Goal colon. H. Result colon. Unique open source design assets for iterative testing and reporting. Link heading level 2.
This is a really important outcome from the work. We have produced tests with disabled notebook users, and we've been able to share those assets, including how the tests were done, the scripts, and the outcome of this work. And this is just incredibly progressive ideas and uses of GitHub and open source concepts from Jen Kotler and Isabella's side. And I've been using these results for the past year and a half to design. Wow, that sounds really bad. It's taken a long time. But anyway, Let's move on. So I think this is one of the really great an excellent outcome of this starting small here is now we have lived experiences to point out to, and we need more of those.
Event accessible notebook hackathon, link heading level 2.
So one of the first community events that we did was an accessible notebook hackathon, and we introduced this concept
Event accessible notebook hackathon, link heading level 2. The first hands-on auditing notebook event focused time to explore auditing testing tools and accessibility features on your technologies. These events seeded the base for accessible notebook authoring guidelines. Space.
So these events were some of the first ones where we started to think about, well, what does accessibility mean? Like, what can we control? And then what do authors have to control? And actually, I had the pleasure of doing a similar formatted event with Venkatesh Patluri, a blind developer who has written an excellent paper on notebook inaccessibility. We work together to host these authoring events, and they're very engaging times to learn about accessibility in a hands-on sort of way. There's a recording of the event that folks can watch. That's in the links in the agenda. I can share them in the Zoom after this. So then after that, this was a really
accessible event ST Sky Day of Accessibility, link heading level 2.
Oof. Okay, so ST Sky, the Space Telescope Science Institute, they hosted a wonderful day of accessibility about a year ago. Unfortunately, I live in nostalgia for days like this, but this was the day that a lot of us met. We had an incredible event. There's a playlist that's available from that day. There's talks from folks working at the Space Telescope Science Institute, Notebooks for All. Josh Miele gave a remarkable talk. We have a great picture of the Notebooks for All crew together here with Sarah Kane, one of our testers and teachers of the non-visual data science course, and her service animal, Alana, and Jen Kotler, Josh Miele, Patrick Smith, myself, and Isabella. And again, we're all really happy. The vibes in this project have been great, which is why I'm trying to carry this torch forward a little bit more. So if you want to revisit the Day of Accessibility, there's a YouTube playlist. And like I said, we made a lot of media. Media is really important in advocacy, which is why I'm recording this. One of the reasons that we all met was because of a project that Isabella and I started together called the Jupiter Accessibility Meetings. And the goal there was to put a focus on accessibility. And in 2021, Jen and Eric showed up, and here's what they said.
Screen read astronomy note main content. Nesting eye, bullet other notebooks aren't accessible and we'd like them to be. Left eye, bullet fellow from Space Telescope Science Institute and Astropy. Eye, bullet other notebooks aren't accessible and we'd like them to be. Eye, bullet we've been working with GLOS Education to test our own work with blind and visually impaired people.
Okay, great. So that's what they came to us and they said. So over the next couple of months, we started building relationships together. And in the meantime, Isabella and I were working on
retrofitting accessibility for computational is so hard. Link heading level 2.
Retrofitting accessibility. It's very hard. I've actually shared
nesting level 1 bullet accessibility main content nesting level 1 bullet accessibility screen reader off.
I've shared 2 issues here that demonstrate how hard it is. Some of these issues are like 3 or 4 years old. And it's been really hard to retrofit accessibility, which is where some of my motivations are. So while Isabella and I were doing community stuff, we hosted the Jupiter workshops. And this is when we started thinking about accessibility and data visualization experiences and starting to bring that into the mix because it's such a critical component to notebook authoring. There's a playlist with Frank Olavsky and Eric Bailey talking about their work in accessibility and what we can do to improve stuff. So I took on the technical challenge of
screen reader Left elsewhere tab. Remediating nbconvert. Link heading level 2.
So my job was remediating nbconvert, which turns notebooks into HTML. And well, I was curious. I couldn't figure out how we were going to.
Remediating nbconvert is a piece of technology. Quote. How do we fix accessibility if we don't know what's accessible? Means, how do we users? Means, how do we improve the quality of tests with affected users?
Okay.
Let screen reader off.
We don't know what it means, so we need a reference. So that's where I went off onto. And then at that time, a bunch of the notebooks for all people
Screen reader
were
on.
jet setting
Astronomy
around.
notebooks for all dash Google Chrome page. Left out. Screen reader off.
Sorry. A bunch of the notebooks for all people were jet setting around the world. Patrick and Jen gave a talk at JupyterCon in France about this project. And then Isabella and our wonderful colleague, Stephanie Jimenez Gasha, presented in Austin. And in that time, Patrick and I got a little bit interested in how this work applies to chat interfaces. A lot of these LLM chat interfaces are notably inaccessible as much as notebooks are, but they're kind of doing a similar thing where you put in a string and you get an output. So how do these concepts sort of cross-apply? We don't know. So we're going to talk about that later. But like, there's a lot we don't know about accessible and assistive work. But the last thing that really, I think the reason that we're all gathered here right now is the non-visual data science workshop, which, man, that was so cool. That inspired me to goof around with, not goof around, that's not nice. That inspired me to really think about how a screen reader could be used in presenting things. It was very interesting to watch a course sort of evolve that was sound assisted. So Patrick and Sarah did a great job working with the Pandas crew and NumFocus to put this together. We really want to see more stuff like this, and maybe the Notebooks for All community can help support things like this, or at least help make the resources accessible. The thing I struggled with is that it wasn't done in the browser, and the browser has better screen reader affordances. So I hope that what we've done can actually become like people learning this in the browser instead, and maybe it becomes more interactive. That brings us here. That brings us to this event. And the goal of this event is to encourage more content made for and by disabled creators. And we really want to push the needle on accessible open source. So that's sort of the full circle thing. That's where Notebooks for All started. And that's where I hope to drive this and pull some other communities in. I'm going to stop there. Does anybody want to have any comments or anything they want to say? I might have went really long, but I really like talking about that work. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to concur about the workshop being awesome with Patrick and Sarah.
Yeah.
I did, the one question I had, what were you saying about browsers being more accessible to screen readers? I kind of missed that.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that a lot today, actually.
Okay.
One of the things is like the table element in HTML, it's really old, right? And it's got really good screen reader support for the good ones, right? And if you're exporting Pandas data frames as actual HTML tables, then you can do row reading, you can do column reading, you can navigate with your arrow keys and stuff like that. So almost make some of the outputs that show up in the command line much more tactile, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
Right, so you can go and find, say, data frame as a table using the table navigation or the quick table navigation. It's got a good caption to it. It tells you some D types or something along those lines. And you have a few of those on the page, right? So now you can start to think about how you might be able to navigate these things and have more autonomy, right?
Okay, I got you. As opposed to like a command line interface where it's much more clunky as far as like going between rows and columns and stuff.
Right.
Okay,
Like
gotcha.
you can't run a column in
No,
the
no, no, no.
terminal.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. In this case, you could run a column.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of concepts that I'm thinking about. In fact, the way that this notebook template that I'm going to show you actually works is I've encoded the notebook as a table. So
Okay.
I'm using it as structured data. And I think what we're finding, like if you think about the ergonomics of a table,
Mm-hmm.
is it's structured data that has a caption. So that describes a lot of data science efforts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're pushing, like as data frames and structured data and named columns and databases proliferate, the table is going to be a really strong interface for assistive technology to operate, right? Because
Yeah.
like an image hides a table.
Yeah.
If you had the table, that's excellent for assistive technology. But if you had the table and the table could cooperate with the image, then for anyone, it's a it could start becoming a multi-sensory experience for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So like in some way or another, it's like, again, like if you start thinking about what makes this assistive, it starts to benefit everyone.
Okay. Can I talk about what I kind of currently do for working with data frames and stuff?
Please, absolutely.
So
Community call, am I right?
I have a really strong background in spreadsheets, Excel specifically, but I've been learning Google Sheets. So a lot of times when I'm working with data frames, I'll just dump it to a CSV and then open it in Excel generally and just start playing around with it that way. That's kind of how I get that tactile, because I'm so proficient at it, spreadsheets, that I really get that tactile feel of my data that way. So that's
Right.
kind of what I've been generally doing.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, it's almost, I'm actually of the mind that like, it's almost like tables, it's spreadsheets in the thing I'm thinking we're doing right now is spreadsheets in spreadsheets. So
Mm-hmm.
rather than like, you can't like go into a spreadsheet in Google Sheets, but like when you have a table of notebooks with tables of data frames or
Mm-hmm.
tables of files that have data in them, right? Or you could just dump the CSV directly. I was inspired by hearing how important it was to get text to a CSV. And I
Mm-hmm.
wondered why. And then I realized because you wanted to get it in structured data form.
Mm-hmm.
So the command line destroys the structure of the data. And
Mm-hmm.
what we're just gonna try and like remind people that there's a right way to do stuff. Because like destroying the structure doesn't make so much sense. Yeah, that's really great to hear what you're doing because I've heard that a lot, right? And like the goal is like how do you design in a way that, so I think that a key to efficiency is not having to leave an application space, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. So like in the studies that I've been doing recently about what makes an accessible table is very malleable. It's not static, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you want to get the table out there and then you want to think about, let's put sonification on top of it, right? Like the more data that we can put in tables, the less you're going to have to make CSVs of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can just copy and paste a table into a sheet now. But getting it into, or even maybe I'll just export you the CSV if you want. Those are like that kind of options are very important.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I want to try and get like all into one place. The editing of a table, it's hard to rebuild a spreadsheet tool. But I think that there's a very limited corpus of things that would still keep you in an application maybe like 80 or 90% longer.
Oh yeah. I'd say the things I do in Excel, there's like a few things I do 90% of the time. I also like do pivot tables and stuff, but like that's not really necessary. But there's a few like sorting, filtering, and a few other key things that I use all the time that would be great to use within an application without having to jump to a CSV and do it in Excel.
No doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
And and I've got at the end of my the next part of the talk, I actually dive into some of these things. Like yes, yeah.
Okay.
There's the sorting thing, right? There's standards for it.
Yeah.
ARIA sorted is a standard, right? Like what my challenge has been, how do I recover all the semantics that we lost when everybody's souls crashed into div hell and they destroyed web pages? There's so much history and metadata and experience like encoded into a data set, and it's wasteful the way that we treat the history of the data that we present. So I really think that there's just like some amazing ways to start thinking about how all of those things actually start to happen in a notebook. Yeah.
Okay.
Very exciting. Very exciting. All right. Super cool. Yeah, anything else? Thanks so much for that share. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, sure.
Sucks that I heard that one before, though. The thing is I've heard it too many times.
Yeah.
So like there's just too many disabled people or assistive technology users who are redoubling efforts that don't need to,
Yeah.
So it's labor reducing.
Mhm.
And I'll make some of those points in the next talk too.
Okay.
Excellent. Really fun. All right, so let's rock on this. And I'm gonna stumble through the screen reader again a few times here, but I'm gonna figure this out. I think it's interesting to like have a conversation with the screen reader as a talk, because everybody says don't read your slides. I'm not. The screen reader is not my problem. Great. Okay.
Screen reader on. Semantically meaningful notebooks - Google Chrome - Tony frame. Skip to main content. Visited link.
Okay. I'm just gonna tab through. I could jump right to the main content, but I'm gonna tab through a little bit.
Tab. Site navigation toggle button collapsed.
Actually,
Left
sorry.
settings. Let's skip to main content. Visited link.
I'm gonna tab through.
Tab. Settings. Push button. Tab. Full screen. Push button. Tab. At Tonifest. Visited link. Opens new tab. S. At Tonifest. Visited link. Opens new tab. S notebooks. Site navigation. Toggle button. Collapsed. Notebook space. Leaving region. Site net tab. Region. Notebook summary. Toggle button collapsed. 17 total cells to code executed in order. 175 lines of code to outputs. Tab. Leaving region. Table of contents. Space. Collapsed. Tab. Cell 1. Visited link. Markdown cell. Browse mode. Tab. Semantically meaningful notebooks. Link heading level 1.
Hey! Welcome to this notebook. This semantically meaningful notebook. That was designed to help assistive technologies have a better experience. This is the first time I'm talking about this. And I have two audience members who I'm so excited about being here. It's awesome. I'm gonna be sad for a quick second. I had to do this because I can't get this talk accepted anywhere. So I put my soapbox on the internet. 2 people showed up, and it's the greatest thing ever. But I'm going to do this soapbox again next month. And I think I'm going to start streaming some of this work once I figure out some technology glitches. Yeah, why don't we continue along here?
Semantically meaning. This is the first presentation of the nbconvert -11y template for assisted reading experiences in This is the first presentation of the nbconvert-11y template for assisted reading experiences in notebooks. These templates look beyond web content accessibility guidelines to construct idealized experiences for assistive technology. 1 Perceivable notebooks.
Okay, so we are going to talk about what makes this assistive. And we're going to do it in 4 parts.
Viz. 1 Perceivable notebooks. 2 Operable 2 Operable notebooks. 3 Notebook demo. 4 Robust notebooks.
Okay, so we're going to go through these 4 concepts of notebooks and how they relate to things. But I wanted to talk about sort of what the
Semantically meaningful
TLDR is here, and the takeaway for everyone.
Screen reader off.
Make this a little bit bigger here. It's a good zoom size. Yeah, when you do the accessibility right, you get good zoom. I've got a little HTML accident here showing, but that's okay. So the TLDR, everyone, including assistive technology users, I shouldn't have to add color to this, should have accessible developer experiences, but they stinking don't, and it stinks and it's sort of aggravating, and I don't understand. I hope that community can help as an alternative to advocating for this. The other TLDR. WCAG is the wrong time for interactive computing education. It's just not right as a reference. We need to think beyond it. We are harming people in thinking that old technology is going to make new technology accessible. So we're going to come up with this concept of reference implementations. It's inspired by ARIA practice guides, which are somewhat questionable community implementations of things. The concept's great though, because retrofitting accessibility is hard. And when we're retrofitting accessibility and we don't know what a good or assistive or accessible experience is, we don't know where we're going. So these reference implementations give us a sober, neutral perspective to start thinking about things. So let's
Screen reader on. Semantically meaningful notebooks H. TLDR. Link heading level 2. H. Beyond WCAG. Link heading level 2.
Okay, beyond WCAG. What's that mean? So the WCAG principles.
Bullet. The 4 principles of WCAG. Perceivable. Link. Operable. Link. Understandable. Visited link. Robust. Link.
Okay. These principles that are defined by WCAG are insufficient for computational literacies. We need more. So it's interesting. Or let's think about this more in the context of disability advocacy.
Semantically meaningful notebooks Google Chrome /DOS robust. Semantically meaningful notebooks Google bullet. Section 508 Amendment of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Link is.
It's drastically insufficient for the needs of interactive computing technology. It's old. It's based on WCAG 2.0.
Screen reader off.
It was published in December 2008, and it's before all of the demanding needs of the modern JavaScript. It's used in the tools that we're operating on, right? So when we target these things, we are just drastically underappreciating how fast technology. Think about how much things have changed since 2008. That's like 30 years. Boy. Anyway, recently WCAG 2.2 was adopted in 2023, and there's a more equitable goal. It's got clearer specifications for implementers and testers than the prior versions. Like, target this. Everything else is just like neglectful. Like, compliance goals are going to actively neglect the needs of assistive technology users. It's going to be a 2-tier experience. So we've got to push a little bit harder to make sure that people start caring here. So there's some hope, right? Because there are some like visionary people in these accessibility spaces thinking about how to represent complex and unknown and generic data sets. There is a philosophy or tool, community group effort called Chartability, that provides a set of heuristics for data visualizations and all those kinds of systems. So what they do is they extend the core principles, so beyond perceivable, operable, and understandable and robust, we have compromising interfaces and experiences. We have assistive interfaces and experiences, and we have flexible interfaces and experiences. So these extended rules, since they're based on data visualizations, must kind of be consumed by notebooks as a substrate for data visualization, right? So the work that I'm showing here, and the work that I'm going to demo, is actually designing around these core CAF outcomes or principles. So right now, accessibility is the floor, and we want to design for more sensory modalities. There's become a really weird bias in the limited visual space that a lot of people's belief occupies. So we're going to talk about what the story, how perceivable the story is. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it look like? When we're thinking about operable and understandable, we want to say, who are you including? Who are you excluding? Is it configurable? And then I've got this escape hatch that's helpful for designing, called the Video Game Accessibility Guidelines. In a lot of ways, video game accessibility has been, some games have been doing remarkable jobs at making inclusive experiences. And there are guidelines in here that we may not find recommendation for in WCAG or Chartability, and it's worth consulting if we have extra questions. So then when we get to robustness, we're going to talk about automated testing and user testing. But we'll get to all those things, but there's going to be a demo first. Does anybody have any questions before I kick off? Cool. Excellent. If I can even, I probably should think about, Zoom does not make it easy to find the chat when you're screen sharing. So I might have to look at the chat in a second. I'm not sure if I'm seeing anything there, but I'll probably forge on and start with just what it feels like. And then if there are folks on the line who want to tell me some of the way, actually, okay, let's do, I am not an affected user in this. I'm designing for y'all. So for me to be talking is kind of like a little bit weird. So let me stop for a quick second. Is there anybody who wants to share like what they do when they get to a new site, or like if you see a notebook somewhere, right? Like I feel like with the non-visual data science class, you've encountered some notebooks or you've encountered some documents. What are you looking for when you approach content for the first time, especially in like the context of learning? I don't know if anybody wants to jump in there.
I mean, so firstly, I'm just looking like an overall picture of what this is.
Right.
So kind of going through headings or just looking for the very top, if there's navigation at the top, just kind of getting a broad brush of what's there and then I'll start digging down as I kind of get a clearer picture in my head of where everything is, what's on this page, what isn't, stuff like that. I don't know if you're looking for something else.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. You know, it's there's a lot of different navigation methods, but headings have become, it's interesting because one of the earliest feedbacks that we got was that visual notebook users, cited notebook users, wanted a table of contents, right? But like with headings, y'all have a table of contents already, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in some way or another, like I've added a table of contents here, and I've made it the option to hide it because I know y'all don't need it, right?
Yeah.
So, if I remove those tab stops from there, then you get a little bit better experience. But for the sighted users, they still wanted that feature. So there are some more advanced ways that we can implement it. But yeah, heading structure is really important. The thing that there's most of the notebooks that are out there don't start with a heading. They start with imports. And we're like kind of not authoring documents with appropriate heading structure. So I think that that's like a push that needs to happen. But the more formal that stuff gets, the closer to a blog post, the closer to a paper, the closer to a report, that is actually assistive. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. So in this document here, does anybody else want to jump in and share their experience, even if it is the same? Just hearing more together is helpful.
I think I saw a message in the chat that I think Andrew has to jump off. I'm not sure who said that.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for being here. I know I got kind of long-winded, but if anybody else has to run too, it's cool. I'm going to post this, and I'll make sure that Patrick sends it out kind of as a little touch point to you all. Thanks so much for being here. Take care of yourself. Yeah. We'll do this again in a month. Bring some friends if they'd be interested too. Cool. Thank you. All right. So yeah, so when do you start Cavalier tabbing?
When do I start Cavalier tabbing?
Yeah.
Is that the term for it? Cavalier tabbing?
Oh, I don't know. That's what I just start doing. I just start tabbing around the
Just
page, seeing where the
smashing
hell
the
it
tab
goes.
button.
Yeah, sometimes you just never actually know where things are going. But when do you start? When do tab stops start becoming important to you in the navigation experience?
I mean, after I've done the heading, it's usually so after I've gone through headings, it's usually arrows or tab, depending on what I'm looking at. Yeah, I'm also looking for like top line navigation if there's like for websites and stuff. That's yeah.
Cool. That's super good to know. One of the things I don't experience too many people who use landmarks, but there are some people who do strongly use landmarks.
I've never used them. I mean, so I learned all screen reader stuff just on my own as on the fly. So I've never like formally learned. So there are probably some features I could be utilizing more. I've just never used landmarks.
But at the same time, too, the documents haven't been made that way, right?
Yeah.
So like until they're authored that way, you don't know what the right experience could actually be. Also, so that's what I'm really kind of hoping to think about here.
Yeah.
And some of this stuff is, what haven't we been sort of thinking about? So headings are great in this. One of the things that we actually are trying to push forward is like on nbconvert, making sure that headings are a little bit better, so that navigation is good. So I'm going to share my screen again. Thanks so much for that share. I'm going to get back into this a little bit more.
Sure.
Yeah, so the first share I had was tabbing, but I kind of did that when I started. But let me go and revisit that again.
Screen reader on some main content. Nesting level 3. Black square how you can sell leaving free lists.
Okay. Where?
Tab. Let's cement set leaving list. Play push tab. Cell 1 escape. At cemented.
Okay. So one of the things that I wanted to one of the things that is I've been thinking about is that sighted users have a visual gestalt that sighted users have access to that let them observe like the quality of a notebook. So one of the things that I added here was during your tabbing very early
Left leaving
on,
list. Leaving
we have a
region.
summary of the
Region.
notebook.
Notebook summary. Notebook summary. Toggle button collapsed. 17 total cells to code executed in order. 175 lines of code to outputs.
Okay, so it gives you a summary of how many cells, how many lines of code, how many outputs, and things like this. I think could be useful to assistive technology users to kind of know like what to expect.
Space.
This is
Expanded.
something that can be expanded, and everybody has access to it there.
Space. Collapsed.
So like I said earlier, we added
Tab.
a
Leaving region. Region. Table of contents. Table of contents. Toggle button collapsed.
So the table of contents is there. It's all this stuff is configurable, but it is expanded by default. That is because there is a large population of sighted users showing up. So they have visual access to it, but it can be hidden for screen readers and keyboard users. So when we start
Skip
moving,
to main content.
so now, so that is, oh yeah, we're tabbing. Okay,
Tab.
so
Cell
so
2,
those are some
link,
buttons.
Marked on cell. Browse mode.
Okay.
Tab. Area practice tab. Cell 3. Link. Marked on cell. Tab. 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 Tab.
Get to some
Tab.
code.
A tab. Wiki. Link. Tab. Cell 5. Link. Code cell 15 lines of code 1 outputs.
Okay, so that's an output cell. So one of the things that I found was missing in some of the early notebook representations is there's no visual label for cells. So we can tab through cells now. And when we hit code cells, we can even provide extra metadata through ARIA descriptions to people. And then that tab becomes a casual way to sort of navigate. If you are deep in the document, then we can
headings : 30 items found dialog. Semantically meaningful notebooks. 1.
So we can find the headings, and there's 13 of them here. They're well structured, and one of the authoring guidelines that we have is 1H1, just to make sure that that experience is correct on screen readers.
Semantically meaningful notebooks / screen reader off.
So those are that is tab navigation. The next thing that we have is
screen reader on. Semantically meaningful notebooks / Google Chrome SKI. Cell 1. Visited link. Cell 1. Visited
so
link.
I am hitting
Marked
the
on
I
cell.
button. I'm navigating to list items. Cells are elements in a list item. So this is one way that we can navigate.
1% for robust notebooks.
So it's kind of nice. And it sort of interleaves with other lists. So that's something I was trying to experiment with a little bit earlier, but I got practice my screen reader chops and presenting at the same time. So we have list navigation, but like I said, some people really like
Left alt.
landmarks.
Left.
So
accessibility tab. Table. Note region. Notebook cell navigation set to region.
Okay.
Escape. Initialize saved setting tab. Full screen. Push button. Landmarks : 22 items found dialog. Notebooks update. Make cell 1 marked on region.
In this example, we have actually changed the cell navigation mode for just the screen reader. No visual changes. The screen reader now uses cell navigation to get from cell to cell, rather than list navigation, with some future opportunities to do stuff like using a table. We can actually navigate with a table right now. It's kind of funky, but it gives an idea. But this is this concept of flexible
Semantically meaningful notebooks
for
Google
our data
Chrome
experiences.
Banner. Screen reader off.
Now, yeah, so that's cool. That's fun. So we talked about tabbing, and then we talked about screen reader navigation, and we're using a thing called the access key, which is a built-in sort of keyboard event thing that lets us do our settings. And then the other thing that we have we're using dialogues and details. And we have to make sure those things are accessible. What's really nice, though, is if you use the HTML5 versions of them, they're basically accessible. And we use these things to conditionally hide the table of contents and our settings. And we can make an accessible, relatively interactive experience from a document that people kind of originally thought is static. So the summary of this part is that in interactive applications, technical debt makes it hard to determine the accessible notebook experience because we're designing around old ideas. And they're bad references. So these reference templates, these things that we're sharing here have the potential to codify what would be best for people. So that's navigation. I hope that stuff sounds useful. So the heading navigation, the list navigation, things like that. I'm thinking maybe it feels a little bit more like index cards to bounce around on the page or something. Yeah.
Summary is really cool. I hadn't thought about that. But that's super useful. Also, the cell level summary statistics were really cool too. I hadn't thought about
Awesome.
that. Yeah, I like both of those.
Awesome. That makes me super happy. Yeah, I ran into this thing where it was when you're screen reader navigating, like no outputs would show up. So I actually have hidden just for screen readers. It says that there are 0 outputs. So that when you're going through, like, you know, if there's nothing to look at here. So yeah, it's fun to put I'm glad that excited you. Awesome.
I actually just started playing around with Google Colab yesterday, and
Yeah.
like these were some of the issues I was running into. Like, I did not know if there was outputs. I did not know how many lines of code. I did not know how many cells. Like, all these things, like I was running into. It's still kind of workable, but like having all this information is super cool.
Awesome. That makes me happy. It's good to know that these are serving the right needs and they're hitting on like real problems.
Hmm.
Because like that's the idea behind this reference implementation, right? Is that what I'm doing can provide insight to not just Jupyter, but Colab and VS Code
Hmm.
and observable as to what the right screen reader structure is for the web page.
Hmm.
Like it's basically like, hey, if you can like retrofit your thing to look like this to a screen reader, then you get all of this stuff too.
Hmm.
You know, so excellent, very cool. I'm glad that there's a need for these things.
No, there
Are
is.
there
That was exciting. Yeah.
awesome? Are there any other things that you could imagine wanting to hear as you're moving through?
Oh, so let me play around more with Google Colab, and once I start noticing things that are like, oh, that'd be nice to have, I'll start documenting stuff. But let me
Awesome.
start doing that, then I'll get back to you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Let's maybe I can open up the discussions on like nbconvert ally, and we can start maybe have a discussion there. Would that be accessible to you?
What is that? Where is that hosted?
It's on GitHub. It would be a GitHub
Yeah,
thing.
so I started learning or playing around with GitHub for the non-visual data science workshop. So yeah, I'm getting better at it. So let's do that.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, we'll exchange information after this. I'm glad you're excited. We'll find a way to. Part of the end of this is to figure out how to continue.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So let me kind of run through this here. So what does it sound like? Yeah. So I already showed you that Gestalt thing, right? And I talk a lot about this with Patrick. Is like, you know, I just spent 10 minutes going through a notebook that had an error at the end. What? Right? Like, I'm trying to trust this thing. And then it's just like, I want the jury to forget that they heard that. And it's like, you can't do that. You just can't do that. So anyway, we want to elevate these things. And I'm glad that that's good. So cell navigation, that we shared that. We don't know what's best for generic content. Toggling screen reader modes is a new concept. I don't know if it's going to work in every browser or with every assistive technology, but there's a concept there. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about is ARIA Live. So I think this is one of the examples where the reference template really, really helped, because in Jupyter Lab, they wanted to add confirmation that like settings and things were changed. So let's take a look at this. So I'm going to crack open the
Screen
screen
reader
reader.
on. Semantically meaningful notebook stat escape. LLS.
And then I'm going to open up the settings by hitting Alt,
Left alt,
comma,
light
in
mode
Chrome.
activated. Accessibility settings. Link heading level 1. Tab. Close push button. Tab. Notebook layout. Link heading level 2.
So we have headings here because you can actually use heading navigation in a dialog because all of the headings in the document are hidden, but you can actually just navigate headings in the settings. But anyway, let's change the color
Tab.
scheme here.
Nesting level 1. Color scheme combo box. Light mode. Opens menu. Focus mode.
And let's change it.
Dark mode. Dark mode activated.
So dark mode activated is something, some feedback that we're actually providing to assistive technology and says update this.
Tab. Horizontal scrolling. Checkbox tab. Set table. Notebook cell navigation set to table. List. Notebook cell navigation set to list. Tab. Accessibility priority. Combo box. AAA. Opens menu.
So oftentimes in web content accessibility guidelines, we talk about different priorities. Target AAA and let abled users downgrade from there. Too often, assistive technology users have to configure things. Let privileged people configure things and give assistive technology the accessible experience. So let's change the priority.
AA.
And now we got some smaller buttons.
Single A.
Now we've got some other things. I don't even know what happens. But you can change the way this looks and give people more control who need
Tab.
it.
Margin
But
percent
otherwise,
tab. Access key
it's
navigation.
accessible for everyone.
Checkbox checked. Tab. Font settings. Tab. Nesting level 1. Font size. Combo box. Medium. Opens menu. Large. Dark mode activated. X-large. Change
So we
font
have some
size.
low vision modes. Without using any zoom, we can crank the text up super high, 400, 500%. But I don't know. I hope that you all are
Screen
noticing
reader off.
the feedback that's happening every time a selection happens. That's called ARIA Live, and that's where we can start to see the inklings of, oh, cell 1 executed, cell 1 completed. Some of the more we don't know. Nobody has any idea what to do for a screen reader experience in interactive notebooks, but this ARIA Live component is going to be very critical in getting there. Cool. Okay. So lastly, we and I just showed some of these things. What does the story look like? We've got light mode and dark mode, but a lot of these features are really features that are already in Firefox reader mode. So you know, that's kind of an accessibility, a cognitive accessibility tool in being able to remove content. So we take inspiration from there. We've had to add some features that didn't exist, right? Like we've had to add the table of contents, this notebook summary, which was a hit here. And then we added the this has some site navigation, but that's all sort of part of it's user content. It's tough to make accessible. But the next thing that we have is this activity log, which I think is something that we have in bits and pieces of the we have bits and pieces in Jupyter Lab, where you are providing actions like confirmations, visual confirmations about something that just happened. We wanted an audible confirmation about what happened, and this activity log provides a substrate for that. And we use it in quite a few places. But it's important to think about providing the right feedback to people so that they can orient themselves and be less surprised. Sorry. So this is sort of the end of the demo here. And I'm probably just gonna, I'm a little bit tired of talking actually. So I think I'm gonna like stop with, there's some more stuff for developers to look at, given the audience here. Yeah, it makes more sense to kind of call it here. But I don't understand why the urge to believe site is so strong at this point. It seems like we're trying to cram big data through a very narrow visual channel that could happen through sense data of sight and sound and feeling cooperating together. So I think our goal is to fight against this urge and figure out how screen readers can be used in demonstrations, how they can be, support even the abled population, because as it's happening, it's kind of helping me here. In theory, since my throat hurts, I could probably run the screen reader right now. But some questions to ask. How robust is your thing? You need to test it. Test with disabled people. Oftentimes, GitHub issues are insufficient. So video calls and stuff or audio recordings can help supplement the language lack when we're writing. Is your HTML valid? That's a robustness question. Does it pass ACTS? That's a robustness question. Does your accessibility tree look sane? Or does your accessibility tree look navigable? And we see one here where it's representing the notebook as a list of cells, so on and so forth. A lot of this relies on the idea that a notebook is a table. We've got a bunch of open questions. We'll start to get to them in the next couple months. But I'm going to do one last thing here. And this is, I'm going to kind of give a little glimpse of the future about what it would mean for accessible Python. So this, where'd that go? Accessible Python. Accessible Python. Hit a link. Okay, accessible. Okay, better semantics for Python reppers. Okay, so sighted people will see square brackets when they see a Python list, and they'll be like, oh, that's a list. But like that is not the case for, it's not easy for assistive technology users to discover Python objects on the page. So in this example here,
Screen reader on. Improved output semantic for Python objects -- Google Chrome -- Tony. Improved output semantic for Python objects. Link heading level 1.
cool. So I'm going to ask for all the lists on the page.
List : 5 items. Note left bracket 1, 2, 3 right bracket. Left paren 1, 2, 3 right paren. Left brace 1, 2, 3 right brace.
That's super cool, right? Your Python objects are right in your list discovery. So now you can use L to navigate through them. You can use I to look through the items. But what if the lists are two-dimensional?
Skip to main content. Link. Escape. Left T tables : 6 items found dialog. Table with 11 rows, 11 columns. Table with 200 return.
So I just navigated to a table with 100 by 200 items. It's a NumPy array, and it's only showing a very small subset of the data. So this means that an assistive technology user can come very quickly to a notebook and discover that there are multiple pandas data frames on the page. There are multiple NumPy arrays on the page, and they don't have to read it all the way through, because all we've done is retain the proper semantics that we've programmed with in its representation. So if we do that right, we get super accessible assistive experiences. And thank you so much for being here and listening to this. Great. That was fun. Thank you for letting me talk and also participating.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Are these things you want?
Yeah, I was gonna ask if I can start playing with it.
Yeah, right. It's I mean, I don't know. I really gotta scheme how, right? Like, this is the thing. I don't know how. I know how to design for the sight and sound and feel of data. I don't know how to do business stuff. So it's some of this needs a lot of funding.
Yeah.
But it is in nascent stages. So what I'm gonna do, Eric, is once I stop recording, I'm gonna get your contact, and maybe we can get together sometime. Maybe we can even stream getting on to GitHub, or improving your developer experience there, right? Like, these are things that I want to create access to, or even I can help support you with that kind of stuff. But let's figure out how to get it into your hands. I think maybe in a month I could do that. Unfortunately, I don't know how to deliver software really well. I just like know how to talk. Yeah, it's so many different skills in making all of this work.
Oh no,
But
absolutely. No, I totally understand. How are you running it currently?
yeah, so it just works with nbconvert, actually.
Can you explain nbconvert?
Yeah, sure. So nbconvert is a command line tool. It's a Jupyter product.
Okay.
And GitHub and GitLab use it for rendering their notebooks, right? So anything that can get into nbconvert can actually have an effect on like GitHub scales.
Okay.
So in the chat here, oh God, what a nightmare application.
Did you lose chat?
Yeah, okay. So there's the nbconvert. There's a link to nbconvert there.
Okay.
So if my package is installed, I'd have to cut a release. So I have to do a release in like a week or so. So it's at the most a week. So maybe next week or so we could get together and see if we could give it a spin, because I'm trying to figure out how I can use this how I can deliver this to disabled or to assistive technology users, so that they can just like take whatever notebooks they have and get this format, because
Mhm.
it is better.
Mhm.
But some of the trouble is that like the outputs have to be done at runtime. So like somebody would have had to have executed the notebook and then it would have had to output the thing, because
Yeah.
like once the semantics are lost, it's super hard to recover.
Okay.
Yeah. So we can figure it out. But even if you have some notebooks, right? Like, for example, it would be interesting to say, like, could we make an accessible version of the Python data science handbook? Maybe that would be a healthy start or something like that. But let's scheme on this. I'd like to get this into your hands. It kind of bums me out that I'm like showing you something that I have and I can't provide just yet, but
Oh,
we're
no
working on it.
worries. Yeah.
Thinking about it. Somebody's thinking about it, and it's cool.
Yeah,
It's fun. It's exciting. I think people are going to like this.
I do too. Yeah, this is honestly further along than I could have hoped for. So this is really cool. Yeah.
Exciting,
Yeah.
exciting, exciting. Well, thank you so much for all that validation. I really appreciate that. It's good to hear from people who this affects. Because yeah, retrofitting this stuff is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And going rogue and being like, hey, we need to implement something else, but like, I'm not intending for this to be something that people use, but I have a feeling it might be. So it's just like supposed to be right, and I think there's a right way to do it. And yeah, that'll be best for y'all.
Cool.
Sick. That's excellent. Well, we'll be in contact, or let me stop the recording. Thank you all who joined the first Notebooks for All community call. It was super great hearing y'all's experiences and offering feedback to the ideas that I want to present y'all with. It was great to do it for the first time. And I'll bring my soapbox back here in a month, and we'll see what kind of progress is made, and hopefully we can get this in the hands of some of the community. So excellent. Thank you all so much. I'm going to stop recording, and then we can keep kicking it.